Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to start on some basic equation solving. So, equation solving is a matter of following a series of steps, okay? In grade 9 and grade 8, junior high, they have you writing things like this. So, what we're looking for when we're solving an equation, what we're looking for is we're looking for the value that n needs to be in order for the two sides to be equal. Okay, that's where we get the word equation from. So how do we do that? Well, we can look at it and we can say, well, this is obviously 6, right? Because 6 plus 5 is 11. So a lot of these we can simply do by inspection, but that really quickly becomes impossible when the equations get much larger. So something like this, very, very simple. So here's what they'll teach you. They'll teach you to do this, okay? To do the same thing to both sides. And what we're attempting to do here is we're attempting to get rid of this 5 from this side because we need to isolate n. N has to be all by itself, one single n on its own side, one single positive n. If we subtract 5 from both sides, we'll get rid of it from this side, and the other side will have 6. Here's how it's also often written out. Minus 5 minus 5. It is what you do, but I would not write it like this. Okay, I'm going to show you how I think you should write it in a second. But notice, of course, we get the same answer. It's just a different way of writing it out. What I want you to do is I want you to think, okay, I need the 5 over here. I don't need it over here next to the n because I can't add it to the n. I need it over here next to the 11 where I have like terms. So when you move that over, you're actually going to change its sign. And what you're really doing is you're doing a little invisible minus 5 on both sides. But you're only writing it on the side that it actually matters, because that's the only side where there's really any math going on. You know that the 5 is going to go away here by this line. So the reason that I don't like students getting into the habit of going minus 5 is because when you get a whole bunch of terms, this becomes very cumbersome. And I see students still in grade 11 and 12 doing this, and I just think it's not a good idea. Instead, what I want you to do is I just want you to move that term over, and if it's moving to the other side of the equal sign, it will take the opposite sign. And then in the next step, you just finish your question, okay? And this is, I mean, these are simple. They're single step equations, so they're not too difficult. Here you're going to add 8 to both sides, but all you're going to write is the addition of 8 on the side that it matters. And then you write your answer. Simple as that, okay? Now, let's make sure it works, right? I mean, 20 going into there, if we put the 20 into the y, does it work? Oh, sure it does. Okay, so we get the left side equaling the right, and some teachers and certain courses will have you checking your work, and that's fine, especially when you're first learning, because it helps to build confidence and allows you to understand what you're actually doing when you're solving for that variable. And another simple one. Okay, we're just going to add 4 to both sides, but we're only going to write it on the side where we actually have to do the math. And then we do the math and we get 21. Your final answer should always have x on the left. So what if it had been given to you like that instead? Well, you would move the 4 over here, right? And then you would have 21 equals x. But instead of leaving this as your final answer, just swap the sides and write x equals 21. And you can even do it, you can even go from here to here right away if you want to, okay? Just add those in your head and then write them the other way around. Because teachers love this, right? Teachers really like to see that variable on the left-hand side because we're not solving for 21, we're solving for x, and we read from left to right. So what is x? X is 21. So it's a very precise way of leaving your answer, all right? So in the last examples, what we were doing was we were undoing the addition that we had there or the subtraction that we had by doing the opposite on the other side. That's always what you're doing really when you're solving equations. What you want to do is you want to undo what's being done in order to isolate x. Okay, so if something is added to x, you subtract it from both sides. If something is being multiplied by x, well, what is the opposite of multiplication? The undoing of multiplication is division. So if I divide both sides by 2 here, you don't have to cross out the 2's, it's not necessary. You're just going to write your final answer, x equals 12. Okay? So what this statement says here is it says, what number x multiplied by 2 gives us 24? It's the same number that 24 divided by 2 is, right? That's what we're doing here. So if I put in my answer, of course I'm getting the correct result. Yeah? Same thing here, we're just going to divide out that 5 and we'll get n equals 9. Okay? Negative 3n equals 21. So for this one, in order to divide both sides by something so that the n goes away, we're not going to divide by 3, we're going to divide by negative 3, because that's what's sitting there, okay? Negative 3n divided by negative 3 is just n. That's all we're left with. Here, a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Okay, so again, if we test our answer, negative 3 times n, which is negative 7, should be equal to 21, and of course it is. So for this one, you might look at it right away and say, oh, it's 20, okay, because 20 divided by 2 is equal to 10. Here's where you cross multiply. Okay, it's a term people like to use. When you're multiplying fractions, as we saw in a video, a couple of videos ago, we do not multiply fractions by cross multiplying. Cross multiplying happens in this scenario here. So what you've got is that, okay? And in a cross multiplying situation, this times this, so y is equal to that times that, 20. And there's our answer. There's so many ways of looking at this. You could say, okay, I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. Remember that what you're undoing is division. So to undo division, you multiply. The reason we're multiplying by 2 is because if I multiply both sides by 2, this 2 goes away. And that's what I need, because I need y to stand by itself. And so I get 20. Another way of looking at this. Multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of this number that's standing next to the y. So here's something a lot of teachers will not show you or explain to you. That's the same as that. Okay, the coefficient on that y is 1 over 2. When we have a fraction that is being multiplied by a variable, and then the other side is just some number, what we're going to do is multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. Okay, now in this case it happens to be, the reciprocal happens to be an integer, but lots of times it's not. And so the 2's go away, same as they did here. Okay, this is just a slightly different way of looking at it. And we have y equals 20. And of course, the old-fashioned method of inspection works well for this one too, because it's so small. Okay, so earlier I said that we always want that variable on the left-hand side when we're done. So when we're done, we want x equals some number, or y equals some number, or n equals some number. But what if it would be easier to work with the variable on the other side? Well, in this case, it probably is, okay? On one step now, I'm going to put everything where it belongs. So this is going to go over here. And the reason I'm doing that, we're going to do it a different way in a second. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want the y to be positive, okay? This, in one step, I'm going to get my answer here. And you'll see that the other way is actually 2 steps. So I'm going to move the y over and I'm going to move the 8 over. I'm going to do that in one step. So because I'm moving the 8 to this side of the equal sign, and because it was positive here, it's going to be negative on that side. And the y, because it was negative on this side, when I move it over, it'll be positive. 15 minus 8 is 7, so there's my answer. Now I don't think there's any teacher that would take a mark off for you writing 7 equals y instead of y equals 7, but this is a better way to leave your answer, okay? It just is. Now let's see this done a different way. This time I'm not going to move the y, I'm only going to move, the 15 over, because really what I want is I want my numbers, my constants, I want them on the right, and I want my variables on the left. So I'm going to write negative y, because it is negative and it's not moving. I'm not moving it to the other side of the equal sign this time. But I am moving the 15, so that will go negative, right? Because it's positive here. Now before we do any division or multiplication in this type of equation solving, we need each side to be a single term. And right now, the right-hand side here is 2 terms. So we're just going to write the negative y again, just as it is. And then we're going to collapse those two numbers, do that math, which gives us negative 7. Now the answer, we don't want to know what negative y is equal to. We want to know what y is equal to. So we're now going to divide or multiply. Take your pick. It doesn't matter how you think about it. Each side by negative 1. Okay, I'll just do a division. This is not something you have to write, by the way. And the negatives cancel on both sides. And so we get the same answer. Okay, how you do this is entirely up to you. Just remember that it is nice to leave your final answer with the variable on the left-hand side and your number on the right-hand side. Okay, that's it for basic equation solving. We're going to have lots more videos on this because it's one of the hardest things in high school math, especially when you get into the word problems, everybody's favorite. So look for those and we will see you next time. Thanks again.